Hey guys, we got a special episode here for you. This is my interview with Danielle Hamilton. She is an expert on blood sugar, insulin resistance, and holistic health. The conversation evolves into an in depth discussion on how light exposure, particularly blue light and red light, affects our body's circadian rhythm, insulin sensitivity, and overall metabolic health. Very enlightening stuff, guys. And without further ado, here's my interview with Danielle Hamilton.
We have a special guest joining us. Danielle Hamilton is a functional nutritional therapy practitioner. She's an expert in the realm of blood sugar, insulin resistance, and holistic health, with a passion for unraveling the complexities of metabolic wellness. Danielle's mission is to guide individuals in uncovering and enhancing their understanding of blood sugar issues, empowering them to reclaim their vibrant health and longevity. Danielle is also the host of the podcast Unlock Your Sugar Shackles, where she shares invaluable insights and actionable tips for breaking free from the grips of sugar dependency and reclaiming control over one's health destiny. Danielle Hamilton, welcome to the Keto and Coffee podcast. Or should I say welcome back?
Thank Yeah, I'm happy to be back. Thanks for having me.
Before we went live, you talked about, from changing your perspective on, blood sugar regulation to the circadian rhythm. I want to talk to you about that later on, but we actually met back in 2020, and I believe that was, I told you this before we went live. We recorded this episode. It was episode 10, and I remember being so grateful for you coming on. But I remember you talking about, suffering from various health issues like, frequent infections, allergies, also had PCOS symptoms. Then sort of that aha moment when you understood the role of insulin resistance in PCOS. And I want to start there. Insulin resistance is misunderstood. We often hear insulin resistance in diabetes, but it often is the root cause of chronic illness.
hmm
Well, before that, let's talk about your mission. Mission is driven by your story. So let's talk about your story and how you get here today. Tell us about that story, Danielle.
Yeah, just to sum up my story, I struggled with a lot of allergies, asthma, sinus infections. I had to get my tonsils out when I was 18 after getting strep throat many, many times that year. Um, I was on all these medications and getting allergy shots, and I was a hot mess. And I changed my diet to a paleo diet and ate real food, and all those things went away. But then I had a really stressful year, and I discovered that I had polycystic ovarian syndrome. I started to get all these hormonal symptoms, and I couldn't lose weight. I wasn't getting a menstrual cycle. I had horrible acne, and I was so tired all the time. And I realized I had PCOS, which
Mhm.
my doctor was of no help to me. Just basically told me, I was struggling to lose weight, and he's like, "Well, you have to lose weight, and you have to take the pill, and there's no cure." And I was like, "Whoa, okay,
Yeah, I
thanks for that
remember
terrible
that.
advice." Yeah, and then I went ahead and figured it out on my own. I realized I heard a podcast that said PCOS is the diabetes of the ovaries, and all of a sudden I realized, oh, I have to pay attention to my blood sugar, my insulin, like all this stuff that I actively avoided learning about because it was confusing and boring.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so that's the story that that's the story that
Mhm.
I tell all the time because that's my story. But I started to realize there's another piece of that story, and a lot of it has to do with my weight.
Mhm.
And I struggled with my weight my whole life. I grew up in New York, and then I moved to Miami, Florida for grad school, and I was in the sun all the time because when you're from New York, you're very obsessed with being tan. It's like a thing
Mhm.
that we all
Mhm.
have. And so I was like, oh, I want to be tan. I want to be tan. I want to be tan. And so I was laying out all the time. I was in the sun all the time. I was at the beach all the time. And I didn't really change anything. I mean, I was actually partying more than I ever had. I was drinking. I was eating terribly. Yet I lost weight. Like
Mhm.
for the first time in my life, I effortlessly lost weight. And then I moved back to New York, and then I started gaining weight. And at
Mm.
that time, that's when I was like, "Oh, I have PCOS and all these things." But I was back in New York, like inside.
Yeah.
It was gray, it was winter, it was all the things. And then I moved back to Miami again after a year, and I wasn't laying out as much. So it took some time, but all this to say that
Right.
there's also another story happening here on top of the story with the food, and that is a story of light.
Mm.
And I am realizing that light, after reading tons of studies, and there's tons and tons of studies on this, and hearing from different teachers of mine, that light is a huge factor when it comes to our metabolism. And the first time I heard this, I'm like, "No, it's not. That's weird. This is what? What are you like?" I was just like, lots of feelings of like, "No, this is too weird. This is too simple. That would be crazy." But just there's tons of studies saying this, and feel free to go dig into the research. But in the absence of food, blue light raises blood sugar and insulin.
Mm.
So, where is blue light? Blue light's from the sun, but also in our light bulbs, also in our devices, also our computer screens, our TVs. Also a lot of lights on all these things that we have inside, on the dishwasher,
Mm.
on the microwave, on the, air fryer. There's lights all over. And any white light, if you break it up in a prism, you're going to see the whole rainbow, and it has blue light in it. And blue light, if we kind of go back even more to our early history as humans living on this planet, as all the plants, all the animals living on this planet, we all evolved living outside under the sun all day. It was really bright. And then it was really dark at night. There were no
Yeah.
lights at night back then,
Yeah.
right? Maybe fire, but that's it. So we I don't want to use the word evolved because I don't want to throw people off. For all of human history, human beings have lived outside in the bright sun and the dark night, okay? And coincidentally, the light from the sun, there's a
Mhm.
wavelength of light that is blue. That is why our sky is blue. It's actually that exact color. That wavelength of light tells our body to increase cortisol. And that's not a bad thing. We need cortisol. If we have no cortisol, we would be like sleeping, or we would be dead, right? So in the morning, the sun comes over the horizon, and all of a sudden, the amount of blue light in our environment increases. It turns on. It's there for the first time. It
Mhm.
appears. And that is supposed to tell our cortisol to slowly rise. So if, let's say, we're early humans, we're living 1,000 years ago, we live in our cave, and all of a sudden we get woken up because the light
Mhm.
comes in our cave, right? We go outside and we see sunrise, and as the sun goes up in the sky, so too does the amount of blue light, so too does our cortisol rhythm, right? And if you've ever seen a salivary cortisol panel, you know that it's supposed to raise gradually, sort of peak in the afternoon, and then gently taper
Mhm.
off at night. So then it's nice and low at night, and that's when
Mhm.
melatonin is supposed to go up so we can go to sleep, right? So we living with the sun, we saw the sun go up, the amount of blue increases, that it's increasing our cortisol, also increases our blood sugar, our insulin, and then it goes down. And then at night, maybe we would light a fire. There's no blue
Mhm.
light in fire. So this didn't mess with these
Mhm.
systems, right? So and then there was like sort of an orange glow. We were still awake and socializing. And then at the end of the night, we see these red embers. Okay. And it was like very dim. And we just had that red light at night. And then that was it. Just the light of the moon, which is very, very, very dim, even though it can kind of brighten the sky a little. It's super, super dim. So there's no light at night, no blue light at night. And the absence of that blue light will tell
Mhm.
our pineal gland to create melatonin. And that helps us go to sleep. And we know, I'm sure you've talked about this on your podcast, how important sleep is for our metabolic health, our blood sugar, our insulin. So where do things go wrong in our modern world? I'm sure you can start to see some of the the gaps that we're going to have. So what happens when, before I knew this, when I used to wake up, I used to flip open my phone. I got a bright light in my face, and then I flip on the overhead light. I'm opening the fridge,
Right.
bright light, bright light, bright light,
That's
all this
right.
blue light. What is that doing to my cortisol? It's jacking up my cortisol. And how many people do you know who have
Mhm,
high morning blood
mhm,
sugar, who have this dawn phenomenon? It's spiking their blood sugar, and it has a hard time coming down because we're getting inundated with this light. Now, that is not the only cause of it, but it is a huge major cause. And coincidentally, one of my clients who struggled with high morning blood sugar, she started the practice of seeing sunrise and standing outside at sunrise, and she's like, "I literally watch my blood sugar just come
mhm,
right back down." So it's amazing that, because also red light, we haven't talked about this, red light, there's a lot of red light in the sun all day, but especially in the morning because that blue light is so low and the red light is so much. Red light, you can also look this up, lots of studies showing this. Red light tells our mitochondria to
mhm.
use glucose faster, so it lowers our blood sugar, so it improves our blood sugar. This is literally why I'm outside
Yeah.
right now, by the way. So I'm getting all this light, but so blue light actually raises our blood sugar and red light lowers our blood sugar. So it's important to have we don't want to be an absence of blue light, because then remember, we'd have like no cortisol. That wouldn't
Mhm,
be good. We want to have this nice rhythm where um where the cortisol is rising in the day, melatonin's rising at night, right? So one of the other factors that sort of comes up in this is no, I'll stop there for a minute. Let's go back to what I was saying with the throughout the day. So we're opening our phones,
yeah,
we're, turning on lights, we're using our devices really early, we're not getting outside. So what does our body think? Our body thinks, because we get the light comes into our eye
mhm,
and goes to what's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the
mhm,
hypothalamus. It's not important, but I just want to throw these things out there because in case someone wants to know. And that is what will say, oh, it's this time. So one of the things that's really important is that light is the primary time giver to our body. So our bodies, they can't be doing everything all at
mhm,
once, right? Like they need to detoxify, they need to digest, they need to metabolize, they need to do this and that and the other thing. We have 100,000 at least tasks every second our
mhm,
mitochondria need to perform. So we have tons of things to do in our body, right? But how does the body know what to prioritize when to do certain things? So if you just look at
mhm,
animals are awake during the day, many of them, the ones who are diurnal, which is the opposite of nocturnal. I didn't know that, so I thought I would define that for people who are like me. So animals who are diurnal, like us, where we're awake during the day, we have behaviors and we do things that we're better at doing during the day. We're better at metabolizing and digesting our food during the day. We're better at solving problems and, running around and having energy during the day. What are we better at doing at night? Detoxifying,
mhm,
repairing, resting. So we're designed to do certain things better at certain times of the day, right? So keeping all these things in mind, we are better suited to metabolize food, like I mentioned, early in the day when there is light, when there is sunlight in our environment. Okay, so now the sun's going down, and we're like, oh, I'm just getting home from work. I'm going to flip on the lights in my house. I'm going to start dinner, and we're eating late. And then we have all this light, and then we're going to scroll, we're going to watch Netflix, and we have the lights on all night long. So, what is this doing to our blood sugar? We have this unnatural amount of blue light
mhm,
when there should be no blue light in our environment, it's telling our bodies, there's a direct message through that suprachiasmatic nucleus that says, you must produce cortisol. It's 2 p.m. So at night, people have trouble sleeping. They have trouble winding down. They're like, I feel tired but wired.
Mm.
Why is that? Because their environment is telling them that it's like 4 in the
Yeah.
afternoon. So it's confusing. So going back to where I said, like, the body needs to do certain things at certain times, I like to think about our body like an airport. And so if we think about it like, okay, all the flights cannot go and leave at the same
Mm.
time. We need a schedule, and we're like, this flight's going in, this flight's coming in, this one's going out, this one's coming in. It's organized, right? So the same thing with our body. So our hypothalamus is like our control center, like the control tower at the airport. So the hypothalamus is going to get that information about the light. It's going to be like, okay, sunrise, boom, I want you to create pregnenolone. Pregnenolone could be turned into cortisol. It could be turned into all our sex hormones. So then we have that going. Then we see another type of light called UVA light, and the hypothalamus is like, okay, I want you to create thyroid hormones. I want you to create serotonin, which we're going to turn into melatonin later that night. I want you to create this and that. So it's creating all these things. It's saying which genes to turn on and
Mm.
off. So we are getting all this information just like a control tower from the light in our environment primarily. That's the number one signaler, and the secondary signal is when we
Mm.
eat. So these are the things that we need to be considering when we're talking about overall metabolic health. We need to be thinking about our light environment, and we need to be thinking about when we eat,
When
also what we eat, but like I feel like people are so focused on the what we eat,
yeah.
and maybe they think about when because they talk about
Yep.
fasting, but and we can go into this later, but I have based on all of this knowledge,
Mm.
there's a big change that I suggest for people's fasting windows,
Mm.
for most people. So, I'm gonna stop
Yeah.
there. That was a lot of information. I'll let you jump
Yeah.
in.
Wow, that's fascinating. That's very new to me. I've never heard
Yeah.
that before. And when you said just moving to New York alone threw off your circadian rhythm, which resulted to weight gain, am I getting that
Mhm.
right? Without changing anything, just changing your location.
Yeah, changing my location on the planet
Yeah.
because I was not getting as much light.
Mm.
And so one of the things that UVB light, like I was tanning all
Yeah.
the time, and you tan in UVB light, which is the light that one of the wavelengths of light that predominates during
Mm.
summer in tropical regions, and that's the light that makes us produce vitamin D, which also helps us to sensitize to
Mm.
insulin. It helps tell the pancreas to create insulin. It's anti-inflammatory. We know it's good for the immune system,
Yeah.
but vitamin D is a huge piece of the metabolic puzzle that we miss because and by the way, unfortunately, supplements I do not recommend unless it's like a dangerous situation. For the average person, if you are taking vitamin D supplements and then you go get your vitamin D
Mhm.
tested, that's not your vitamin D. That's how much the supplement just gave you.
Mhm.
It's just not the same. And it's actually been linked to autoimmunity, thyroid issues. So I don't recommend vitamin D supplements on the whole.
Mhm.
If you're listening to this, it's the middle of winter in
Yeah.
Canada, and like you did not prioritize UVB light during the summer and you don't have those stores, maybe there's a gray area there.
Mhm.
And please, like this is not medical advice. However, what I recommend right now that we're recording this, it's spring in the northern hemisphere. And it's the perfect time to be starting your solar callus, which is basically like a
Mhm.
tan. We want to get all the benefits of the sun without the sun's negative effects. And the way we do this is thinking about we need to consume the sun's light in all the
Mhm.
spectrum. So a huge amount of the sun's light is actually infrared light, which is heat, which tells our body to it helps our mitochondria. Like those
Yeah.
red light therapy panels
Yeah.
everyone's using? It's like that stuff, right? So it's helping our mitochondria create ATP and cellular water, which is really important. We're like I won't go into that. So when we're consuming the sun's light, trying to get vitamin D, if you're very pale and you just go outside at like 12 noon and you're like, oh, Danny told me to get vitamin D, what's going to happen? Your skin is probably going to burn. It's not ready for that. So that's not what I recommend. So first things first is morning sunlight. Morning sunlight, and I'm specifically talking about at sunrise. You want to get that light in your skin and on your eyes. That's going to set the circadian rhythm. That's going to slowly turn on our cortisol, like we talked about. It's going to lower your morning fasting blood sugar. And it's amazing. And that light is going to condition your skin to get the harsher UVB
Mhm.
light. Then there's another time. So that's sunrise light is when the sun is 0 to 10 degrees off the
Mhm.
horizon. There's an app that tells you when all these things are in your area. It's called Circadian. So you could go to circadian.life and download it. I have no affiliation, just a big fan. So then after that sunrise light, then we want to get UVA light. So UVA is present all the time, all year round, everywhere, but it's very strong during this next window where the sun is 10 to 30 degrees off the horizon. So this UVA light, again, is going to condition our skin to get that UVB light, but it's also going to tell our body to make serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, and
Mhm.
endorphins. That's like absolutely
Yeah.
incredible. So all these people on, depression medications, ADHD medications that can't
Yeah.
focus, that are on anxiety medications, all of those
Yeah.
neurotransmitters will help with all of those things, with drive, with focus, with mood. And then the endorphins piece, like, yeah, I'll take some endorphins. That's amazing. Endorphins feel great. And then it also tells our body to make thyroid hormones. How many people do you know have a sluggish thyroid? So, that could be that metabolism piece of the T3 and T4 being made in the morning sun. That could have also been another piece that was impacted when I moved to New York from
Yeah.
Florida because I wasn't outside as much. And I was also all wrapped up. I was also all bundled up. I'm not saying that everyone needs to move to Florida. There's other
I mean, they
things, but
sure.
for me, that's part of my story. Yeah, yeah, we can. But and especially as someone with a darker skin tone, it's very, very important that you are prioritizing all these steps so that we can get UVB light, because the darker your skin, the more UVB light you need to make melanin and to make vitamin
Mhm.
D. And so then after the UVA light, there's UVB light, and that's where we can synthesize vitamin D, but it also helps to improve our metabolism, and it can actually help to suppress our appetite. So this is another piece of the puzzle, how I lost weight when I went to
Mhm.
Miami. But getting that vitamin D, we want to slowly, gradually increase the amount of time that we're outside in this UVB
Mhm.
light, also depending on our skin tone. So there's a scale called the Fitzpatrick scale, and it's like a 1 on the scale is someone, let's say, like from Ireland, very pale skin, freckles, does not tan easily. And then someone who's a 6 on that scale might be someone from Africa with very dark skin, like black or dark brown skin, that always has a very deep tan
Mhm.
and does not burn. So you find yourself in, wherever you are on the spectrum, and you want to just make sure that you're getting the appropriate amount of light so that you build that solar callus, which is a tan. You can't see it on this video, but I'm very tan right now because I was just in Costa Rica, and I've been
Right.
prioritizing the light out here in Austin. It's like 80 degrees. It's amazing. So I have been outside a lot. I do want to say I also cover my face, and I would use sunscreen, like a zinc-based sunscreen, if
Mhm.
I had to, but I'm trying to avoid using that by seeking
Right.
shade when I need to and using clothes to cover up. So that's how, and then there's one more part of the sun of the day that I want to talk about to sort of finish out this vitamin D conversation, which again is essential for our blood sugar and our insulin and our immune systems. It actually acts like a hormone. Um, the end of the day, when that blue light has also gone
Mhm.
down because it reduces at the end of the day, again, the sun is sort of like a giant red light therapy panel, which is funny because I'm like relating it in modern terms, but that makes sense. So this red light therapy on our skin when the sun is in the evening, it soothes and heals the skin. So it's super cool to think that the morning sunlight is preconditioning the skin to get this UVB light. Then we get the UVB light. The vitamin D we create is anti-inflammatory, which helps. And then we have the soothing aspect of the sun in the evening so that it mitigates the damage of the UVB light. So if we look at the sun at the full spectrum, it makes sense because we as humans lived outside for our whole history, and we would have been outside for all these times during the day. And so that's the way the sun is meant to be consumed. That's the way the sun has such positive benefits for our health beyond the vitamin D, including a lot of those hormones and neurotransmitters I talked about
Yeah.
earlier. And there's so many more. I literally could be here all day just listing off benefits. Nitric oxide, which is helpful for blood pressure. Like there's just so many benefits to the
Yeah.
sun's rays that we want to be able to be out there and consuming it in a healthy way that's not detrimental. To our health. So that's the vitamin D piece, and we can talk about food timing as well. But does that how's that
I'm
landing?
in the wrong part of the world. Now I thought about it, right?
Where do you live?
Canada. Up
Oh,
here,
you
up
live in
north.
Canada.
So now that I thought about it, when I was in the Philippines, a tropical country,
Mm-hmm.
I honestly, it was like last week and I was there for about almost a month. I didn't gain weight. I mean, I wasn't as strict there, but certainly,
Mm-hmm.
keeping on a keto diet, but I wasn't
Yeah.
gaining weight. I was having off plan meals here and there, and I wasn't so much of I was relaxing. I was indulging myself with
Mm-hmm.
these foods, but I
Yeah.
didn't gain anything. I feel like this is such a hack.
Yeah.
We're talking about going
Yeah. So
outside.
there's
Yeah,
another
go ahead.
so there's another reason for that, something crazy that I want to talk about because there's another piece of this that is one of the things, like just intuitively, if I were to recommend, like, let's say you come to me and you have, like, let's say you have type 2 diabetes, and then you have a twin brother who lives in the Philippines, still living in the Philippines, and you are in um,
Yeah.
Canada, and you guys both have type 2 diabetes. Does it make sense, just intuitively, for me to recommend the exact same food to you in Canada? It's snowing and cloudy and cold and very dim light. Does it make sense to recommend the exact same diet to you and to him?
I don't know.
He lives like closer to the equator.
I
Like,
would, but I don't
to
know.
me, it just like, and think back. Okay, now it's not 2024. Think back to like 1800.
We're good.
What food would be available?
Right.
Right? So we're so used to our modern grocery stores that we go in and any food is available
Yeah.
anytime. But that's so it is it's crazy because it's convenient, but it's also harming our health in a big way. And it has a lot to do with a word that I'm going to say, and people are going to be like, "Oh God, I don't even want to know." I don't know. The word freaked me out when I first heard it, but the reason is because of something called deuterium. Deuterium, you may have heard it referred something in science. Deuterium is basically heavy hydrogen. So let me explain. Stick with me. It's going to be real easy to understand, and it's going to make sense, and it's going to be super fascinating. Okay, so all food breaks down to electrons, right, in our body and has to go through what's called the electron transport chain in order to make ATP and water, which is how we get energy, right? So we have to have basically these hydrogens going through this electron transport chain in order to make energy. So at one step on this electron transport chain, there's a tiny motor. It's called a nanomotor, and I think it must be so cute. It's inside of all our mitochondria, which, like, we have hundreds or thousands in all of the cells of our body. So we have tons of mitochondria with tons of these little nanomotors, right? The nanomotor can fit one hydrogen. And hydrogen, if we remember back to like 8th grade science, is one proton. So it's only got one like little thing in it, right? And but deuterium has one, it's also hydrogen, but it has one proton and one neutron. So think about hydrogen having one basketball and deuterium having two basketballs. So as this hydrogen is going into this nanomotor, the one regular hydrogen is totally fine. But the deuterium is too heavy. It's got these two basketballs. It's too big and it F's up these motors. And so it's damaging our mitochondria. And so then we don't output the same energy. We struggle with metabolic health. We develop diabetes and a lot of chronic issues. So where is deuterium, right? Where is deuterium? Well, it's in sugar. It's in sugar and it's also in water. And the closer you get to the equator, the higher the deuterium levels. So the closer you get to Canada and to the poles, the lower the deuterium. So if you think about it, the deuterium is high in things like, think about sugar cane. It grew originally in like tropical areas. It needs to grow. Right now, I know they grow a lot of sugar cane in Florida. It's like grown in the tropics. It needs a lot of light to be produced. Then things like tropical fruits like bananas and papayas and mangoes and pineapples, all the foods that I was indulging in Costa Rica where they were growing, but I'm not eating them right now in Texas in April. It doesn't make sense yet. Then things like grains and, unfortunately, processed food, vegetable oils, they also contain a lot of deuterium. So this deuterium is in our bodies. It's messing up our mitochondria and our metabolism. And so one of the ways that we excrete deuterium is through infrared light, sweating, and UV light, and creating more what's called cellular water. So basically like grounding, being in the sun, that kind of thing. So think about that, the light, the sweating, the grounding, all of that helps us to get rid of this deuterium. And so if you're in the Philippines or in Costa Rica where I was sweating buckets every day. I was like, I'm going on a deuterium depleting walk. And because like literally just like I just picture the deuterium just like pouring out of my body because it's more in the water there because you can deplete it more. But if you go to Canada and you eat a banana in the middle of February, it's not biologically appropriate because there's so much deuterium in that banana and then it's cold out. Are you sweating? Are you outside in the sun? No. So you can't deplete it. So it's more damaging for you. And there's another aspect of it. When UV light hits our skin, it changes our gut microbiome to be better able to digest simple sugars. So we actually, like when I was in Costa Rica, my gut microbiome was changing, or your fake twin brother in the Philippines. Do you have a twin brother? Your fake twin brother in the Philippines, who's under this UV light, could better tolerate some of these foods than you up in Canada. So this just brings up the idea. And if you understood none of that or like don't care to learn that piece, just understanding that seasonal and local eating is really going to be, that's what I'm starting to, first off, try to do myself because it's hard. And I have not mastered this yet. So if you're like, oh my God, Danny, that sounds so hard. Yeah, it is hard. And I'm struggling. So, I'm going to a farmer's market. I'm looking at what's in season on Google when I walk into places. And I'm like, okay, if it could grow, I live in Austin right now. So if it could grow in Austin right now, I'm going to buy it because it makes sense that food is also light. it's also giving us information. So I said that the phone screen and the light bulbs at night are confusing our body. Confusion in our body results in what we call chaos, metabolic chaos, and that results in inflammation in our body. I'm going to try to move the table. Too much sun now. Okay. But so we don't want to confuse our body. So if I'm eating that banana in Canada in the middle of February, my body is like, oh, there must be a lot of light outside. And then I go outside and the sun is like hardly above the horizon. It's super, dark and wintry and it's cold. That's a mismatch. That's a mismatch in the information that my body just got. And that confusion basically is chaos in the mitochondria in the body, and it results in inflammation. So local seasonal eating is going to be highly, highly recommended. And when we talk about ketosis, we talk about, I'm sure you had Ben Azadi on your show talking about flexing out of ketosis. And one of the best things we could do is for women, I love the idea of flexing out of ketosis, especially the week before our cycles, but also seasonally, if we think about like guys, it does make more sense for you to do keto, fasting, carnivore in Canada all winter long. That makes sense. It makes sense because that's what would be around, right? But when it's summer and even like into the fall, when there's squashes and berries and all these things, it also makes sense to eat those foods. And guess what? You're going to have a better tolerance, meaning glucose tolerance of those foods, because your gut bacteria will have changed. And this is only if you didn't spend all summer indoors. Your gut bacteria will have changed. And if you eat the food outside, this is another thing. Like I always put hashtag like eat outside club, because when you eat outside, you get the benefit of the sun, all that red light on you, and you have better blood sugar responses to your food. So it's a really just like a really, really cool thing.
It's so important to understand is you're saying we have something that can heal us. It's under our nose, right? All we need to do is follow
above our
head. Just follow what our ancestors did. Waking up with the sun and then eating foods that are in season.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of research to do because these are all new to me. And everything that you said, it makes sense. And I'll have to follow and subscribe to this because there's a lot of information. I mean, where can we find this information? Is it on your website?
So no, it's not on my website yet. I'm starting to talk about this stuff on Instagram, and I am in the middle of creating, my blood sugar mastery course. That's my signature course. I've run it like 19 times. And I have incorporated this information. Now this is like the foundational module in blood sugar mastery, because the wins that my clients are experiencing from all of these circadian and quantum strategies, which is what they're called. Don't let those words scare you. I mean, just unbelievable changes. Like my client who has, just to give you one example, my client who has MS, we've worked together for a while, and she said that after 2 p.m., her legs would kind of just like give out and she wasn't able to really walk. And, on a good day, she'd have to be laying down in her bed at 5 o'clock because her body just kind of gave out. So she started seeing sunrise. She started doing UVA. She started doing a lot of grounding, which is another place we get electrons. So right now my feet are on the bare earth. You can also ground. We could talk about grounding in a second, but you get electrons. Remember I said the electron transport chain makes energy? Sunlight also gives us electrons, and food gives us electrons. We can get energy from other sources other than food. Isn't that amazing? Like we can use the earth and we can use the sun to get more energy, because I know a lot of us with metabolic issues. I mean, my number one symptom was I was so tired all the time. I was just so tired. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. And then we'd eat something and then you'd crash after that. Like, I mean, just like I was always tired. So that's a great tip for anyone struggling. It's also anti-inflammatory, like helps your blood unclot and flow smooth. I mean, just tons
Yeah.
of benefits. But so she started doing the sunrise, the UVA, the grounding, the like being outside, and she's like, Danny, I can walk like anytime I want. She's like,
Mhm.
It's 5 o'clock and I can just go for a walk. I
Wow.
can walk for over a mile at 5 o'clock." And she's like, and it was on a coaching call. And at her time, it was like 8 p.m. She's got her red lights on in the background, which we can talk about too. And she's like, I'm fine. She's like, I can be like a normal person, go to bed at like 9 or 10 p.m. She's like, I feel totally
Yeah.
fine. And she's like, my mood has improved. I'm less snappy. I'm less impatient. I mean, just the
Mhm.
amount of, and that's just one person. There's so many people seeing huge changes across the board with this stuff. So I think we're going to start to see more of this soon. Um, but I did also want to talk about one of the other things that she's doing, that I recommend for everybody. Is she was fasting during the morning, like a common thing, like skip breakfast. Fasting is
Yeah.
good for us, all these things. So when it comes to all this, like the circadian rhythm, which is really like that cortisol and then going down, and then the melatonin being low in the day and going up at night, that's really the circadian rhythm, like this timing of all our cells. That word, that phrase circadian rhythm, is still a little confusing even to me. So I am not a scientist, so I like
I
to make stuff in like nice and easy to understand terms, because I'm not some sort of like genius who can just like understand these things. And I hope that people are just following along and just getting these basics. So this rhythm that we have, this idea that we need to do these things at certain times, that we have these rises in hormones and lowering in hormones at different times of the day, so then everything's working as it should, just like the airport that's running, right on time. That's that circadian rhythm. And what I see people doing is they skip breakfast and then they eat lunch and then they eat dinner and then they're hungry later because they didn't eat all the protein that they
Right.
should have in the day. And so they eat before bed. And unfortunately, this is like the worst thing you could
Yeah.
do. um, it's like we do not want to eat late in the day,
Mhm.
because
Love it.
remember I talked about we're better at metabolizing certain
Yeah.
times of the day. We are better at metabolizing food earlier in the day, and it gradually worsens. So coming back to like insulin sensitivity, our insulin sensitivity is best earliest in the day and gradually gets worse. So we get more insulin resistant as the day goes on, and especially after the sun goes down. I always say when the sun goes down, insulin clocks out.
Yes.
And I see this on my CGM, as I could eat a meal with, like, let's say half a sweet potato in the morning, my blood sugar hardly moves. If I ate that same meal at dinner, or especially like after dark at like 7 o'clock, my blood sugar would be up so high for
Yeah.
so
Sure.
long. And I don't know, have you seen similar on your CGM?
Yeah, it's funny because my wife and I have been doing this food timing thing, and we don't eat after 3 p.m. and we don't, and it's worked for her. It's worked for her
Yes.
because she's
Yes.
lost so much weight without changing her diet. And so you just
Amazing.
explained, because I've been looking through
Mhm.
social media or Google on
Mhm.
what's happening, because you know after 3 p.m., I thought it's always about like just, oh, your body's just conserving energy at night. So it wants to conserve energy. And whenever possible, especially at night when your metabolism is slow, it's going to store that as fat. And I always thought that. And I didn't think that this will be just a part of, circadian rhythm. So, I mean,
Yeah, it actually has to do with that, and that's a good thought, but it actually has to do with another hormone we haven't even talked about yet, called
mm,
leptin. So leptin is a more of a master hormone, and it goes even deeper than insulin resistance. And I'm just starting to learn about leptin. I'm actually in a course about it right now. Um, but what I know is that leptin resistance always comes before insulin resistance, which is wild. So you can also have leptin resistance without yet having insulin
mm,
resistance. So what is leptin? We've heard about leptin as like this
yep.
satiety hormone. So like leptin and ghrelin is like the hunger hormone, leptin is a satiety hormone, but that's like not doing it it's like doing it a disservice to just call it that, because it's so much more. So leptin is a hormone that is produced in our fat cells. And every night around 12 to 2 a.m., its job is to go up to that control tower in the brain, the hypothalamus, and say, hey, here's your daily report of how much fat Danny has stored on her body. She's got this much glycogen in her liver. She's got this much body fat. And you know what? We're kind of at an excess of the body fat. So tomorrow, feel free to lower her appetite a little and feel free to burn that body fat because we have enough of it. So that's leptin's job. Leptin also will communicate to the hypothalamus between meals, which is why snacking is not good for us. It's not good for our insulin. It's also not good for our leptin. So let's say there's another person and this person has their leptin is trying to dock to their brain, and they say, or let's say this is me and I'm scrolling on my phone all night, I have all the lights on, I'm like super anxious, like, having text message arguments, and my cortisol's up and all these things. And so what's going to happen is the cortisol is going to block, it's going to compete with the leptin for that space on the hypothalamus to give its report. It's like cortisol is there first, so no more leptin. Leptin can't talk. Same thing with insulin. So when we eat late at night, insulin competes with leptin to tell the brain what the story is. So now when leptin cannot communicate with the hypothalamus, my body is going to assume that I'm starving. It's going to be like, yo, I did not get that information from leptin. And I don't think we have any body fat on. We don't have anything stored. I'm getting a 0 reading here. So tomorrow I need you to please increase her appetite and even make her anxious. So she goes out and gets food. Like, we really need to get food, and just make sure we keep using that going to get food and raise the appetite. And if she has any body fat, do not burn that because we need to store that because there is a problem here. So if leptin cannot dock to the hypothalamus, our body will assume we're starving. It will increase our appetite. It will not allow our body to burn body fat. So this is a huge problem because what's going to interfere with that signaling? Cortisol, high cortisol at night, which comes from lights being on, blue lights, our phone usage, dopamine. This is me with the scroll. So I have the light situation figured out. I have my blue blocking glasses on. I have my red light bulbs. I have my phone screen red. But guess what? I'm still scrolling, getting all that dopamine hit. And unfortunately, sorry guys, non-native EMFs. It's like invisible light. The phone is right over my stomach as I'm laying in bed. And all those EMFs are everywhere. And that's messing me up. So the past 2 nights, I'm literally on night 2. If you guys feel bad about yourselves, don't worry. I know all this stuff and I'm still struggling. So technology is so addictive. I'm on day 2. Thank you very much. Of no phone in bed. So this is my challenge to myself. And per my Aura Ring,
What
got
time? What time do you
crowns
start
last
this?
night. I started, I just don't take my phone into bed with me. So, and I did read last night. So I turned my phone off around 8:30 and went to bed around 9:30, 10. So like an hour, half an hour before bed. I mean, that's minimum, So, but I had a much better sleep last night and I woke up this morning. And over the past couple of days, I'm like, why am I so brain foggy in the morning? I just don't feel that energized. And I'm like, I'm doing all the things. Well, guess what? It was the freaking phone. It was the phone at night derailing my entire progress. So I felt my brain was on this morning and yesterday. I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's the phone. So anyway, so the phone, the lights at night, eating too late at night, caffeine too late, all of these things are going to block my body's ability. It's going to block that signal from leptin. All right, I'm getting noise. Do you want me to go inside?
I don't hear it.
Okay. Okay, cool. So so fasting, I recommend in the evening time. That's a great time to fast. And so when should we eat breakfast? Well, most of y'all are not going to be hungry for breakfast right away. And the way to start getting hungry for breakfast is actually seeing sunrise,
Right.
because that's going to trigger all these hormones to turn on. And you're going to have to do it for a couple of weeks before the appetite starts kicking in. So, what I recommend is slowly move your eating window earlier so that you don't have food in your stomach, but like by the time you wake up in the morning. And then we're going to see sunrise with naked eyes. That means no glasses, no contacts, no
Mhm.
windows. So you can crack a window and look through like the screen of the window, or just be outside. And then you want to see that light. And then shortly after sunrise, within an hour of sunrise, ideally, that's when we want to eat breakfast. And that's when we want a really good breakfast, lots of protein and healthy fats, because that's going to signal leptin, like, oh, she's eaten, we're good. Like it helps this whole system to run better. So, and then we want to
Sure.
wait to not eat for like 4 to 5 hours for our next meal. And that's important as well.
So around what time do you recommend having that that breakfast?
Within 1 hour of
Within
sunrise.
1 hour.
So yeah, whenever sunrise is for you. So again, that's why I like that Circadian app, because it tells me when sunrise is here. Right now it's 7:15 in Austin. In Costa Rica, it was at 5:50
Uh,
a.m. So really different times for eating. But what you'll find is when you wake up consistently and you get that light in your eyes and like literally I'll wake up, I'm like, "Oh god, I'm not going to want to eat today." And sure enough, I get outside, I'm outside for a couple of minutes, boom, my appetite
Mhm.
turns on. I'm like, "Yes." So, it's really it's really cool, but that is really helpful. And um it's been just
Sure.
phenomenal for helping all these blood
Mhm.
sugar things. And then the one thing I didn't talk about yet that would also be helpful for your people and for you is, how do we make our house
Mhm.
livable when the sun goes down?
Yeah.
Because it's like, Danny, I need to see things. I can't be in the
Yeah.
dark. Like, what are you talking about?
Let's
I
talk
can't just
about
turn off my lights. What are you crazy? So, number one, I do not expect you to live like pioneers.
it.
This is something that we can do. So, if you go on Amazon, I
Okay.
can, I'm happy to send your followers. I have sort of like a little curated little store on Amazon of just some of my favorite stuff. But there are light bulbs that do not have any blue in them. So if you are a person who's like, okay, I'm not going to do this, you can also do red lights. Like I have red light bulbs in my house. I have little red motion lights, red night lights. Red does not disrupt circadian rhythm. It doesn't impact our
Mhm.
cortisol at all. So you can have this red light. We don't want that to be the brightest light in the world, because the brightness can still impact us, but these little lights are great. So for me in my house, when the sun goes down, I have an orange light bulb, and the orange is, I feel like, a really good sort of intermediate
Right.
because it mimics the
Yeah.
fire. So I talked about that
Yeah.
earlier. So it was like a little bit brighter. I can see some of the colors of things, like, and it also isn't putting me to
Yeah.
sleep too fast, because in the winter, when the sun goes down at like 5 o'clock, and I turn on red light bulbs, I'm going to
Yeah.
be asleep at 6. So it's like, how do we, stay up and feel a little bit more alert? So some of those light bulbs that have no blue, and some of the
I
orange
can do
light bulbs,
orange.
and even candlelight. Yeah, candlelight, Himalayan salt lamps. These are some ideas of things that how we can set the vibe in the house. It's a
Yeah.
vibe. It's a cool thing. And then what I do in my bedroom, I have a red light bulb. I have two lamps in my bedroom. I have one with a white light bulb and one with a
Yeah.
red light bulb. So if I need that white light, which I almost never use, but if I need that white light bulb, I'll turn that on during the daytime, and then the red one is for nighttime. So just giving you guys ideas of like
Yeah.
how to do this for your own house. And then we have, what I do is an hour before bed, that's when I'll use just the red. So I turn off the orange, and that ideally would be when we get off devices. Maybe you can read. I have like a little red book light from Amazon again. So like these, like a little red book light, you can read by candlelight. And so there's things we can do. We don't just have to like go to sleep at 7
Yeah.
p.m. It's not like that. But there's different things we can do to mitigate that light at night. And then the other thing is we can turn our screens red. So on an iPhone, if you go to the color filters setting, you could just Google how to turn your phone screen red. And so I have it where I click my home screen button 3 times and it turns it red, and then I click it again 3 times, it turns
Mhm.
it regular. On an Android, I believe it's the Twilight app you can use. And then there's also Iris software for your computer. And I'm not affiliated with any of these, just a big fan. Iris software can turn your screen more red. It has like a sort of like a toggle where you can like bring it down a little bit or make it super red. And then there's also for TVs, that's a harder one. They do make some TV covers where you can get like an amber or like a red one, but that's where I like to start to think about blue blocking glasses, which I use all the time. My blue blocking glasses, I went from trying to remember to use them to not being able to live
Yeah.
without them. So I have like you think, okay, my house is red lights and orange lights, no big deal. Why do I need to wear it? Well, the street lights, the neighbors' lights, the like holiday lights, like all these lights, headlights coming in through the window. And so I like to just put on my blue blocking glasses at night. I mean, even some people, I mean, my refrigerator, I did put translucent red tape over the lights, but normal people who have a normal refrigerator, like you
Yeah.
open the fridge, there's a light right there. So we can get these lights in our eyes, and I don't want anyone to be like
Yeah.
paranoid about it, but just this idea of like this is really impacting my circadian rhythm, my ability to sleep, and therefore my insulin sensitivity. If you just want to look at it from that sense, but it's also affecting your leptin, which is more of a master hormone, which is going to tell your body, can I burn this fat or not? So hope
Yeah.
that's explained enough so that you guys
Yeah. Well, yeah.
can make some
What
changes.
I'll do,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take the transcript of this episode right now and list all of these
Mhm.
things. We're gonna need that list. I'll link it down in the description box below so you guys can check out the lights that we're talking about here. I'm gonna have to do this ASAP. I'll have to talk to my wife first, but um, yeah. So phone, right? No phone at night. You said, I might do the challenge too. If I don't do a challenge about the phone, I might not ever do it. So it will have to be a challenge
Yeah.
for me. Competitive that
Yeah.
way. Think I could do it. Maybe start with, 7
Yeah.
days, see what happens, right? No phone at
Yeah.
night.
And can I give a piece of
Yeah.
advice
Yeah.
for that? So the first piece of advice is set yourself up first with something else to
Right.
do. Because if you're just like, okay, I can't be on my phone, like what am I going to like, what are you
Yeah.
gonna do? So start thinking about that
Yeah.
first. So get some
Alternative.
books, get some physical books, not a book
Yeah.
on a Kindle, not any of
Yeah.
this stuff. So you have to get physical books, journals. If you're like, oh, maybe I'll just listen to music, light a candle, maybe I'll do some stretching. Maybe with my partner, I'll exchange, head massages or skull massages or foot rubs or something like that. So getting creative with what you
Yeah.
can do in the evening time instead of being on the phone.
Yeah.
So reading is an easy one, but instead of being on a screen, and also just start with just right before bed, like when you would normally get in bed and be scrolling. I don't know if that's anybody else here, but like maybe just that time. So it's not like, okay, the sun goes down. Now I can't have a phone. Like, don't make it too hard, like using James Clear's Atomic Habits principles. Don't make it too long. Don't make it
Yeah.
too hard, or else it won't be achievable. So make it achievable at the beginning. And I'm telling you, I just did kind of like the half an hour before bed and saw a marked change in my sleep in just 2 days. So we don't have to, shoot for the moon here. We'll just do little bits that feel doable for you. Okay?
I love that. But I want to ask you though, for people who live in Canada like me or New York
Mhm.
who can't, move to Miami yet, what do you suggest for us without the sun right now? It's overcast. Well, what can we
Mhm.
do?
I'm Yeah, I'm glad you asked that
Yeah.
question. So when there's no UV in your environment, there's probably cold. And the answer lies in embracing the cold. The cold has a lot of
Mhm.
benefits. This is something I haven't studied quite as much because I've been more focused on the sun and stuff, and it hasn't been cold here. So I haven't sort of leaned into that quite as much. But I mean, just for example, when you get cold enough, that's why people are always cold
Yeah.
plunging. It builds brown fat, which helps you burn fat, and it helps your mitochondria. So it's sort of like you're using the sun, you're embracing the sun and the heat, or you're embracing the
Right.
cold. And so I want people to
Mhm.
understand that no matter what the weather is, that's perfect for your body. Unfortunately, we can't go out in all the weather that exists,
Yeah.
but I want to challenge you to get uncomfortable. And, I'm sitting outside, I'm starting to sweat. Like, it's honestly, if I didn't know all this stuff, I would have probably moved back inside a little
Yeah.
while ago. But I'm like, nope, sweating's good. Heat is good. So I'm just kind of like allowing myself to be uncomfortable. So same thing with the cold. Stand out in the cold, cold exposure. Um, Ladies, be careful with your cold exposure. Don't go crazy, and please don't be cold plunging like the week before your cycle. And so, what what I recommend is just to what like you said, you don't have sun there, but you do have the sun.
Yeah.
And what you want to do is get outside every morning, be in the cold, get your
Mhm.
grounding in, and you don't have to ground with your feet. Like if it's too cold, you can just touch any living thing that is rooted into the earth. You can touch that. I could literally touch a leaf, touch a blade of
Yeah.
grass with my fingers, and I'm grounded. So that is
Mhm.
powerful because it's just another modality that's free and easy and has huge benefits for
Mhm.
people, and is, like I said, another great way of getting electrons, which is how our body makes energy. So the getting outside in whatever weather it is going to be what's important for your body. So the only people I'd recommend to move down to like Florida or, Costa Rica are the people who are unwilling to go outside in their current environment.
Mm.
So that's really the challenge, is getting outside no matter what the weather is, as long as you are safe. Like, please don't, if it's like, you know, 45 degrees below freezing, it's like, Danny told me I needed to stand out here and you're getting like frostbite, don't do that. If it's like a thunderstorm and there's lightning in the area, use your head. But otherwise, do the best you can, even cracking a
Mhm.
window. If that's all you can do, keep the window cracked. You want to get all these rays of light in. You want to
Yeah.
take breaks throughout the day to just step outside and look at the sky. So your body knows, okay, it is April 4th. It is 2:30 in the afternoon. Got it. Like, you just want to keep syncing your body so it
Mhm.
knows what time
Yeah.
and date it is, so that it knows what to do.
Mm.
Does that
Yeah,
make
so just
sense?
basically get outside, right? Whatever the weather is.
That's
It's
right.
such a hack
Just
again. I mean, I gotta, I'm always happy when I see the sun, and now I know why, right? It's just,
Mhm.
you're syncing with
Yeah.
with your rhythm. So, you've given us a lot
Yeah.
here. Thank you so much for giving us all these tips. I mean, I've never heard this before, and I had to scratch
Yeah.
all my questions here. So, but I'm so glad that you explained this to us because this is something
Yeah.
new to people. And if this can heal their underlying condition with as simple as just getting outside, it's free. You don't have to pay for it. I mean, that's
Yeah.
even better, right? So thank you once
Yeah.
again. And where can people find you and connect with you, Daniel?
Yeah, sure. So I hang out a lot on Instagram. I'm starting to talk about this stuff more there. And, what you eat is still important, but I really think that it our environment isn't getting enough, airtime.
That's
So
right.
I think that it's this new really important piece. And you mentioned like this is such a hack, but I feel like these are strategies to heal instead of just trying to
Yeah.
hack. So I'm gonna change your wording a little bit on that. But yeah, it's like this deeper healing, But yes, also like a hack, like eating outside with your feet on the ground, you get a better blood
Yeah.
sugar response. Like, yeah, heck yeah. So anyway, my Instagram is Danielle Hamilton Health. My podcast is Unlock the Sugar Shackles. I also have a YouTube, Danielle Hamilton Health, and my upcoming program is Blood Sugar Mastery. That's my coaching program. It's going to start May 2024. So I can send you the wait list for that if anyone wants to work together. And then I'm also going to have I'm just starting to work on another program called Circadian Strategies for Better Blood Sugar. So like the circadian approach to blood sugar. I'm not sure what the name is yet, but everything I talked about as it relates to our blood sugar, insulin, and leptin levels. So
Uh,
yeah, lots of fun stuff coming down the
Awesome. We're
pipeline.
gonna link everything down in the description box below with your storefront there, all your favorites and your website and everything will be down in the description box below, so you guys can check that out. I want to thank you again, Danielle, for accepting my invitation to come on here. I really admire your work, and please continue to do what you do. You're helping a lot of people here, and please talk about this. This is something new that I've never heard anyone talk about before, and I'm gonna re-listen to this. Look at all the. I'm gonna have all the notes and probably share this to a lot of people that I think haven't heard this before. And such a
Yeah.
gem to have you on here. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being open to this. And I know it's different than our normal, talks about ketones
Yeah.
and things like that. But oh, by the way, I should mention those of you who do this. I mean, this is the Ketones and Coffee podcast. So I have to mention two things one about ketones, one about coffee. Have your coffee after breakfast, because if not, it's going to spike the heck out of your
Mm,
cortisol. So for me, my reward for having my breakfast first is that I get a cup of coffee, and it's the
mm.
best. So that's a little swap that I
Okay.
encourage you to try to see how that works for you. And then with ketones and the ketogenic diet, one of the reasons why it's so powerful is because fat, the good kinds of fats that we eat on a keto diet, not vegetable oils, those fats are very deuterium depleted, and it helps us deplete deuterium in our
Mm,
body. And so that's one of the many reasons why it's so helpful. So it's like it
I
all
love it.
connects. It's just like a different way of looking
I
at it,
love it.
right? Like I think it's so cool. So thank you for being open to this. And I'm glad it sort of like sparked something
Yeah.
in you,
Yeah.
because I have
Absolutely.
not been this excited to learn about something for a really long time. And I'm just like
I'm
super
happy for
excited
you.
about this
I'm happy for
information.
you.
So yeah,
I thought you
thank
were gonna
you.
say quit coffee, but right. Woo.
Nope, don't quit the coffee. Just make sure it's
Organic.
organic.
Okay. All right.
All
All
right.
right, Daniel. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye.